All right, welcome to the show. You're listening to Scott and Shane here on Prepper Talk Radio. Good morning.
Well, actually, you're listening to Shane and Scott here at Prepper Talk Radio.
Okay, thank you. That's awfully kind of you.
Well, you're leading the boards
I'm on
today.
the mic again.
We kind of bounce every week between who's running the boards and taking the captain's chair, I guess. It kind of looks like a captain's chair, you know.
Yeah.
I think the Star
For the
Trek
control
Enterprise
panel
would be
here.
very proud of us.
Not with the how high-tech this panel is, though, right?
Well, it does remind you of the original series, doesn't it? It was probably
You're
built
right.
the same time that show hit the original TV back in the day.
You're probably right.
I mean,
about that time.
At that time, this was high tech. You know,
Hey, it's some seriously good technology, I tell you.
absolutely
Works well.
What's funny, though, is the old technology lasts longer. It doesn't break as easily.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just tougher.
It's solid state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I miss all that stuff.
Well, we've got it every week here in front of us, so of course we want to acknowledge our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com, the only first aid kit tougher than nature. Thank you guys for supporting us, and check out the website and go pick up some of their first aid kits. They are seriously the best quality, and you know, I don't go through a lot of first aid supplies, honestly. Mm-hmm. What I do, you know, maybe some Band-Aids that there's in the bathroom, right? You want to have your supplies ready when you need them.
So I look at it this way. Like, when I go adventuring, I want a kit that's light and compact, that's easy to use when I need it. And they've got kits for that. When I go on long road trips, I want something that doesn't take up a lot of space, something that's waterproof. So if I go on a boat or whatever, it's good to go. And that's what their kits are designed to do. So that's why we love them, because if you're not using it right away, it doesn't expire. It stays good for up to 20 years. So we love them. Check them out. Today's going to be a fun day. I mean, we've got a good topic, I think.
It's a very broad topic.
Absolutely.
And basically, I get my inspiration from a lot of people online on YouTube and so forth. And you know, being so involved with everyday life, it's hard to keep your mind on track, right?
Yep.
At least it is for me. I'm speaking for myself. Hard to keep my mind on track for prepping for what I need to do to keep on that course. And so we hope you guys use our show, us speaking, to help you keep on track for prepping. Because you're listening to this show, you're obviously doing something to prepare, right?
Yep.
And that's the point, is to do something. And what we want to focus on today is post SHTF is kind of after the fact. And I'm going to stick a windscreen on the mic here because I just heard that pee pop there, and there's no windscreen on here. So I'm going to try and stick this on here.
So while he's working on that, so we do pull a lot of our topics from the web, right? The content is derived from the conversations that we get engaged in a lot, and so then we think, okay, yeah, let's make that into an actual show. So we're not just pulling it out of thin air every week. Sometimes it's comments on our social media page, you know, Prepper Talk Radio. Find us on Facebook or Twitter. Communicate with us, connect with us. If you've got specific things you want to talk about, we'll always bring those to the show.
And we have
that's
a lot of
the
people
whole focus.
we follow, and we love what they say. And, you know, of course, we have our opinion, we have our knowledge, our experience on those topics, and it reminds us, okay, yes, we need to talk about these things. So that's really what today is about, in something we're preparing for, right? We're getting ready for something. We don't necessarily know what that is. We have an idea
Yep.
of what those things we're getting ready for might be. We're thinking ahead. We're trying to plan ahead, prepare for the future. And what we need to really consider, this is the idea I want to put in your minds for you to consider, is what is your role after it hits the fan? After whatever it is, an EMP, whether there's an earthquake, whether there's, you know, whatever
pandemic.
it might be.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
there's so many different things that we need to be simultaneously preparing for. But the big question is, what are your skill sets? What do you bring to the table? I mean, because after something happens, there's a lot of rebuilding that needs to happen. And it starts socially, right? Is bringing people together to create teams and to create a community that can rebuild. So what's your role in that community to rebuild? Now, I'm going to put this statement out there right away because there's a lot of people that are like, well, I'm a leader. That skill, if you're a business leader, you're useless unless you have other skills. And I can say that with confidence, because you only need a few leaders. But you need leaders that understand the situation, because if you're, for example, I used to work in the finance industry, and after that I worked in the higher education industry, and those are great industries. But the leadership, the knowledge that I have from those industries has no carryover. The only thing that has carryover are the leadership skills. But if I don't know how to lead through this type of crisis, I shouldn't be a leader. My team shouldn't rely on me to make those decisions. So anyone who's like, oh yeah, I'm a CEO, I can lead. Well, if you don't have any physical skills or physical traits that can lend to help, you're useless. So work on those skills. Find out what those other skills are, and hone those, because there's way more needed physically than mentally.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of those skills. What I think we really need to try and focus on here is, okay, what is it that we're preparing for, first of all? And then what are we doing now to get ready for that situation? And what do we bring to the table? And let's diverge from there a little bit. We talk a lot about not being the lone wolf, right?
Right.
The lone wolf is just not going to make it for very long.
Right.
It may seem at first to be a little easier. I'm the lone wolf. I don't have to take care of anybody. I don't have any other responsibilities other than myself. I can more easily take care of myself in the way of scrounging food or whatever it might be in a post-apocalyptic scenario, post-apocalyptic world, than it is to take care of an entire family, for example.
Right.
Now, those of us who have families, we don't even consider that an option whatsoever. But also consider, okay, maybe right now you consider yourself a lone wolf, right? But what does that really mean? You have to realize that everything you have around you that allows you to be a lone wolf, right?
Yep.
All the systems that are in place, the grocery store, I mean, everything.
Yeah. Well, we're all floating around in this on-demand life right now, right? Everything's easily accessible. All you need is a credit card, right? And you can get whatever you need. So you really don't even need your own money. But it's all driven to facilitate this reliance on the system.
On the system.
Right? So as soon as the system goes, how do you survive? How do you get by? Because as a lone wolf right now, you're relying on thousands of other packs for your substance, for your subsistence, I guess is the right word. You're relying on all those people. You're relying on the wolf pack that takes care of the electrical grid. You're relying on the wolf pack that takes care of the water, the power, the gas, the electric, the phone systems, the food getting to the grocery store, because the grocery store only carries about 3 days worth of food.
Yeah. So if you think you're doing things by yourself on your own, you're really not. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't want to say this because I'm going to get booed here, but you didn't build that, right? Like Obama said. Obama said that. You didn't build that. We built, I mean, I don't want to give him any kind of credit whatsoever, but
it's a false statement, but also a correct statement if applied correctly.
Okay, yeah.
Like, he tried to take credit away from the people that actually are working to build stuff.
Yes, he did.
And say that, well, it's the government that made that happen. No, it's the community that made that happen.
It's the individuals. It's all of the individuals together in a concentrated effort, whether it seems like it or not.
Right.
That make those things happen. And my argument, and not getting political, I hate this, is we could do it better without the government.
I think so.
But also consider that, okay, when not being the lone wolf, we don't want to be the lone wolf. We encourage you not to be the lone wolf. What does that mean? That means we have to organize ourselves, right, in some kind of a group. Maybe you call them a MAG, a mutual, what do you call it again? Just a mutual group, a tribe, family tribe. Call it a tribe if it's family. Call it a ward, right?
Right.
Call it, whatever it might be. It could be a militia, or whatever type of organization.
Yeah, a team, whatever you want to call it.
Team,
it's whatever it is. You can give it its own identity, but the end of the day is it's a group of people coming together to accomplish a goal, right? You know, in Utah, it's interesting because there's such a large weight, associated with it, and so all the LDS community, each ward has an emergency preparedness coordinator with a couple of assistants, and they try to get the ward onto the same page so that if something does happen, they all know what roles they have. and they can get things going.
But there's also
take care
welfare
of each other.
committees and so forth that we're all looking out for each other is the idea, right? I mean,
Right.
It doesn't always work perfectly, but I mean, that's the idea. And it is a type of government, right?
Right. And I met a guy, really neat guy in Florida, Ed, and he is working on creating a sustainable food supply and sustainable community solution where he lives. He's not a Mormon. He's just a really great guy. I'm not going to say Mormons are great over anyone else because that's not. It's personal character. Everything goes back to personal character to tell you who's a great person, not. But he's working on solutions, primarily working with teens to help them be the focal point to create a response team when there's an emergency. So it's almost like the Boy Scouts, Venture and Varsity Scouts, what they could have been. And it's all focused on rebuilding the community, taking the search and rescue efforts and doubling down so that they know how to rebuild, so they know so he has them do construction projects, he has them do gardening, and he's working on all these projects with these kids that normally wouldn't have another outlet, to help them create a community. So now, because they've created that bond now, which is what our goal is, right? We want everyone to have a kind of a community bond now so that you have some skin in the game, so that you have a network of people that you know and trust, and you know what each other's skill sets are and what they bring to the table.
Now let's look at real quick what if an event does happen, or when an event does happen, whatever it might be. What happens initially? Obviously, there's going to be some chaos.
Oh yeah,
there's going to be we're going to hunker down.
I think everyone's going to start off with the what just happened. Like when you get a flat tire, you're like, do I really have a flat tire?
What just happened?
What just happened? Mm-hmm. You got to pull over. You've got to assess the situation. So same thing. We're going to have that much larger flat tire moment, right? But then we got to assess the situation. We'll probably all hunker down while the disaster's happening, or while whatever's going on, and then we'll regroup. Mm-hmm. It's just like when you're getting your pants beat off of you in a football game. All of a sudden they score 2 touchdowns on your own. You're like, what just happened? Right? You've got to take a time out. You've got to figure it out, figure out what your game plan is, and then start acting on that. And as preppers, we should all have a binder at home that has our game plan for what we're going to do next, right? And working hopefully with that community, what are we doing next? Assess the situation, find out what everybody has, what their skill sets are, and what we can do to start rebuilding.
Yeah, I think we're trying to focus on, what is our role post-emergency, post-SHTF, post-disaster. So we obviously need to figure that out now, just like you're saying.
Right.
So let's look a little bit closer at what happens through that type of emergency, that type of disaster. Is obviously a little chaos ensues, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe a lot. I mean, who really knows? So those who are prepared tend to stand out, right? And those who are not, what happens to them? I mean, what they're looking for help, right? They're not the ones offering help. They're not the ones. I mean, but I'm having some I guess a conflict here of exactly how to approach this, because we know that, we're saving up food for our own families, right? We've got our own preps for our family, and they're not for anybody else, right? We're stingy at this. We're keeping this for ourselves, right? So post-SHTF, who are we? What kind of people are we? And there's our music. So we'll continue this conversation after the break. Thanks for joining us here on Prepper Talk Radio. Thanks to our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. See you guys after the break. All right, we're trying to talk about the post-SHTF situation, scenario. What will our roles be? What will we bring to the table when it comes to different groups? So when an event happens and we all hunker down, and like you say, after that event, people are going to start to come out, and I won't say a new form of government. Who knows what's going to happen, right?
Right.
If the government's still going to have control, or
well, let's use an actual real
whatever.
scenario, right? Okay. So I used to live in Florida. While I was living in Florida, I was on a mission for my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and that at that time, the tornado that hit was and it still is recorded this way, is the deadliest tornado that has ever hit in Florida. It actually touched down in 3 different areas. It was very, very destructive. And the following morning, this is back when we still had pagers, the entire mission got a page, check on all of your missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
We had we had a tornado. And so it went through my entire zone. So my zone was the only zone affected. And we were then tasked to just go help clean up immediately. So government was still in place. Emergency services were still in place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't know, we can't foresee exactly what's going to happen in any type of disaster, but not all disasters are end of the world disasters. And so what happened here is it was a community involvement cleanup. It was recovery. It was getting resources back going. So the utility lines and everything else that were disrupted, those crews were working on that while everyone else was working on, let's clean up this guy's house because it's decimated, or let's help these guys move this so they can get to that. Or, it was a lot of cleanup. I mean, we spent 3 weeks afterwards as missionaries in our regular non-missionary clothing, gloves, boots, just cleaning up and moving stuff, and it was a huge service.
And I guess the key is that you became organized.
We became organized very fast. So as missionaries, we then reported to the local ward. And the local ward reported to the stake. And the stake, we had 2 stakes in that zone at the time, and they worked with the community leaders, because it happened through a few different cities, and they organized under the city's emergency preparedness department. And so that was very tightly held and communicated so that there was no confusion to where they needed people. Certain people were given radios, and they would rally people to the place they needed to be. Okay, let's look at
that. So why were certain people given those radios?
Because they were the comm coordinators. So
they'd already
been trained on the radios, and they were city personnel, except for a couple of them were ward emergency prep coordinators, and they had their own radios. And so they're like, oh yeah, if you've got radios, let's put you in this area.
They had the experience.
So they had the gear, they had the experience.
We're getting to something here.
Yeah. So it all goes back to, this scenario wasn't an end of the world scenario, but it was the end of the world as we knew it for a time being.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It was a disruption of the world as we knew it for a time being, especially for those families that lost their homes. They were completely displaced. And in some cases, their home was damaged. In other cases, their home was completely decimated.
So what did you see when a lot of people did a lot of people jump in and say, hey, I want to help?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So what did most people want to do? Did they want to be the chief, or were they okay with being the Indian?
Most people wanted to be the Indians.
Okay.
Because they didn't know what to do. Right?
Okay, yeah.
Everybody wants, I think innately everybody wants to help, right? Mm-hmm. That's why I created PrepperCon, was because I felt like if we can help create better, more prepared families, we create more prepared communities. Because everybody wants to help. It's kind of an innate characteristic of who we are. We can make choices and eliminate that internal mechanism over time. But I think innately, look at a little kid. They're always wanting to help. They're always wanting to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over our lifetime, we can lose that, or we can facilitate that and grow that. So innately, I think we all want to help. I don't want to get into the social issues that we have going on, but that will come to play. There will be those opportunists that are like, oh, hey.
Because it seems to me in a lot of cases, most people want to be the chief. They want to take charge. They want to be a leader, right? Whether they necessarily have the skills or not, right? But or
they'll disagree and they'll say, "Well, we need a different leader. Why don't I be the leader? Because you guys are all wrong, right?" Pride gets in the way. People will argue. But it's impossible for one leader to make the right decision for everybody, because it goes to the old adage: you can make some people happy sometime, or all the time, and all the people unhappy most of the time. It's just messed up.
So it definitely comes down to pride and ego that way. So what we want to try and head off there is let's make these plans ahead of time so that we don't have to. But okay, so let's look at it from a slightly different perspective. Is okay, we don't belong to any particular group, right?
Right.
We don't, other than maybe our family, right? We've got our family. We've made our preparedness plans, but we're minimally prepared, right? So after an SHTF, let's call it SHTF. Let's not call it emergency or disaster. Let's go more extreme this way. Let's call it an SHTF.
So total life
collapse
changer
of whatever it might be, financial or nuclear. Whatever it might be, and the government, maybe it's still operating minimally, but overall we're in charge of ourselves, right? It's up to us to take care of ourselves,
right?
Which is the way it should be anyway. But So what do? We find ourselves, we've got our family, we're trying to survive, but I still consider just being a family unit, a tribe, still kind of a lone wolf scenario.
Yep.
It's still very difficult to survive on your own.
Right.
So what's going to happen? Okay, there's this big void where, okay, the government, or whether it's community or federal, whatever, there's now a big void. So who's going to start filling in this void of a lack of leadership, of lack of whatever it might be? Who's going to start filling in that void? And what do you picture your role to be, whether it be in the community or just your family, whatever? What do you see your role being?
So and here's some role ideas that I've kind of made a list of, just to kind of help you, the listeners, and us with the topic where we're going. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's the leaders. There's one that I think that gets overlooked a lot is the mediator.
Okay.
Because everyone's going to have conflicts of desires of what they think we should be doing. A mediator will help kind of bring all the conflicts down and resolve things. The medic, the scout, someone who's going out and checking things. But I think that also falls in with security. But also there's the role of the hunters and there's the gatherers, the farmers. You know, I mean, everyone has different things that they're going to bring to the table. You know, the food prep and food. I mean, because really the best thing to do is get into a soup kitchen type line and have someone producing large meals. Because when you're cooking on a fire, when you're cooking without all the electricity that we have currently, you're starting all over. You're jumping back a long time, and you're. It's better to cook large meals for a large group than it is to cook a bunch of little tiny meals for a bunch of little. Right? You know, it's going to be a lot easier if we have kind of a soup kitchen creation or
some type of community
kitchen.
Yes.
You know, a planner, someone that's helped planning, and prioritizing what we need to be doing. Handymen and construction workers that can help rebuild and that can fix things, and communication supervisors that are working to rebuild, that connection with the government and with other communities, and then traders.
And I think it obviously very much depends on where you live. If you live in a rural area or if you live in an urban area, that organization is going to be quite different. Now, with this void that's created, right, what I've started to do is make a list of my own skills.
Okay.
Make a list of, what do I have? Because if you're able to do something and do it well, do you have the tools? Do you have the components? Do you have the stuff?
Do you have tools that don't need electricity?
Hand tools, absolutely.
Because a lot of people don't have hand tools. A lot of people have their
power drills,
cordless power drills, and that's great until there's no electricity. So if you don't have a backup system, those tools no longer work. It's just a screwdriver now that's really big and heavy and awkward.
So if say you're a nurse or a doctor, you've got some amazing skills, but do you have the supplies behind it? Like we talk about survival medical, that these things that store for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Do you have the supplies to back up your skills?
See, I've got their surgical set.
Okay.
I don't know how to use that.
Yeah.
But I've got it primarily for the fact that I've got tons of doctors in my neighborhood, and I don't want to risk not having them have it, so I might as well have
Especially
it.
if you need surgery for yourself, right?
Yeah, and I've got all these extra, Mylar tarps and everything else just so we can create a clean room. I don't ever intend to be the guy doing any of that, but I've got it because I know that there's a community need, right? And I was blessed enough at the time financially that I could afford to get all those extra things. Me personally, I've got a little extra food than what my family needs, so my intent is to share that with my community. Because I know there's other skills that people are going to bring that are going to benefit my family. And so I've got to find ways that I can benefit those families as well. And some of you may think, oh, you're too altruistic and you're too hopeful. But you know what? Hope is the only thing that's going to get us through a disaster of that magnitude.
Yeah.
If we lose hope, if we lose faith, we're worse off. And I think that brings in another trait or another characteristic is, do we have someone that's going to entertain? Do we have someone that's going to be a spiritual leader? Do we have someone that's really, really funny? Because, man, if you've got a funny guy during a disaster, that lightens the spirits. I mean, look back at the history of Utah. When Brigham Young was bringing the saints across, he at one time said, okay, stop. We're having a dance tonight because morale was so bad. He was like, ladies, put on any makeup you can find. Guys, dress up, clean up, and dress up. Go pick some wildflowers for your ladies, and we're gonna have some fun tonight. And they were tired, and they were exhausted, and they were beat down. I mean, they'd been driven from their homes, but the morale boost of that very thing saved them.
And I find just in the drudgery of life, you forget those kinds of things.
Oh yeah,
you're constantly, I just got to do this. You have this long list of things to do, and I never get to the fun things, right? The things that make life more enjoyable. Sure, work is important. It's enjoyable, and that's what life is about. It's about work. But to take those breaks. So, yeah, like you say, having that leader that can take that situation and say, hey, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's do this or that.
Well, I find it interesting in all the frontier towns, right? One of the first things that was built was either a church or a school.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true.
And oftentimes it was one building used for both. Mm-hmm. So on the weekends it was a church. During the week it was a school. Or a community center. Some type of building was created for cultural improvement.
Place for people to gather.
Place for people to gather. Place for people to grow. That's going to be the same for us. We're going to need that. No matter who you are, what your background is, it doesn't matter. We all need that grounding, but we also need that that ability to just relax and to be entertained and to enjoy something, so that we can have that morale boost. That's why, you look at the USO; they go provide entertainment for the soldiers all over the world.
That's true,
and it's a huge improvement because it helps them to feel uplifted emotionally. Maybe not necessarily spiritually, but emotionally, to be uplifted. It gives you a lot of strength when you have that boost.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, looking back at my self-assessment, right, of what I feel my skills are, because eventually you run out of stuff, right? Yes, you need to have your food storage, right? But you got to know how to grow food. You've got your ammo stash,
right?
You're going to run out.
To go with growing it,
right? Exactly. And so it really comes down to skills is what is ultimately going to make you valuable to a group. So part of my self-reflection in looking back in is, okay, where do I fit in right now?
Okay.
Where do I fit in with my groups? I have my family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brothers, sisters, so forth, my community, my ward, whatever. Where do I fit in now? What are my strengths? What are people calling on me to do? Because they obviously seek some kind of a strength. So, Shane can do this well. Let's ask him to do that. So I'm doing that self-assessment. Okay, what are my brothers and sisters? What are they relying on me for, or my kids, or whatever? And so I think figuring out where you fit in now, and then figure out what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are, and then build on those weaknesses and build on those strengths.
Yeah, I think one of the funniest things is you can actually find out quickly what your skill set is by joining a church, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because they'll put you to service.
Primary teacher.
And it's funny because they'll put you to service right away. Mm-hmm. And you'll find out if you're good or bad at it, whatever it is. But also look at, what do people call you for the most? Mm-hmm. Is everyone calling you to help move? Is everyone calling you when their car breaks down?
Back? Yeah, exactly.
Is everyone calling you, when they're out of food and, or when they're hungry? What people are calling you for the most?
Or, hey, I'm pretty sure Shane has that tool. Let's call him and see if we can borrow that from him.
Yeah, so you'll find out quickly if you just kind of think back on the last year or two of your life, what people have called on you for the most. That'll help you understand what you're good at. Mm-hmm. For me, it's probably mediation. I get called on that for a lot. Leadership. But repair work, handyman stuff, man, that thing is at the top of the list.
Yeah.
I get called on a ton. Hey, my window's broken.
Or at least you can help direct someone to the right resources,
right?
If you can't do it yourself. Yeah,
hey, the garage door doesn't work anymore. Hey, this latch broke. People will call on you in the skill sets that you can demonstrate great proficiency at. Now, if no one's calling on you for those things, then what's your skill set?
Now, I think an important aspect I want to talk about this real quick is, now as being a prepper, we say, okay, I'm really good at this. I'm really good with the gun, right? I'm a great shot. I'm skilled. I'm in self-defense and those types of things. What happens when they ask you to do something menial, like clean out the stalls, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to have the ego to be offended by that? Are you going to be the snowflake in that case, right?
Well, if you're the guy on toilet duty, right? You're cleaning out pretty crappy stuff.
Mm-hmm. And that maybe should give you some incentive to say, okay, I want to get really good at this skill because it's going to be very much needed, whether, EMT or medical, whatever.
Right.
I'm going to be very well trained. I'm going to have all the supplies so that people can't say, okay, go do this dirty chore when I can be over here, helping others with my skills and with my supplies, right?
Well, I think part of it also needs to be is that we need to be willing to learn all the other skills as well, right? Because I think any good job duty chart is going to rotate from week to week or every, bi-weekly, whatever you want to do, so that you've got opportunities to learn those other skills so that you can broaden your skill base. Because that's what the whole focus is take away that I'm only trained in medical or I'm only trained in, construction. We want to take away that so that we become broad skill based again, like they were 120 years ago.
Especially depending on the size of your group and size of your community.
Right.
If you're a small group, you're going to have to know more. If you're a large group, you can be a little more specialized that way. So, well, there's our music. Thanks for joining us here at Prepper Talk Radio. Thanks to our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. We'll continue with this topic after the break. Thanks for listening. All right, we've been talking about, I guess I wouldn't call it a doomsday scenario, right? Because doomsday is going to be far worse than what we're talking about. We're talking about what will our role be post SHTF, after a big disaster, an EMP, whatever it might be. And we don't like to get too doomsdays here on the show. We'd like to keep it light and such, but we want to prepare you guys.
It's not that we want to keep it light; it's that we want to keep it something you can talk about, right? We want to keep it hopeful.
We don't want to scare anybody.
It's going to suck.
It is.
No matter what happens, it's
true.
going to suck.
It's going to suck big
And
time.
if you don't think it's going to suck, I don't have a safe place for you to go hide. I'm sorry. It just doesn't exist. The reality is we don't know how bad it's going to be because we've never experienced it, right? Everything is speculation. But like us, I mean, we've been led to do this, right? We've been taught that there's an apocalypse coming, right? But then you look at just from a national news type of thing, you're like, holy crap, in international news, it's like there's a lot of crap that could come down the pipe pretty quickly with just a little bit of tipping point.
Exactly. And if you're not part of some kind of a group, whether it's just a family tribe, whether it's a MAG, or whether it's a ward, after the disaster, you're basically either you're going to join one of these or you're just not going to make it, right? You're going to die. Because it's so much harder to live as a lone wolf, whether it's your individual family, than in a community, because you need that support there. So that's what we're talking about, is what do you bring to the table? What would you bring to the table in order for a group to allow you to join their group?
Yep.
Are you more of a liability because you don't have food storage, because you don't have tools, you don't have this, you don't have that, and you don't have the skills? Why would a group agree to bring you on? Because groups will form, with or without you, or they'll come into your area.
Right.
And so what do you bring to the table in order to join this group that has resources, that has people, that has security, safety, that has a plan to survive? And what do you bring to the table in order to allow you to join their group, right?
Right. Because there's going to be two types of groups that are, well, more than two types of groups that are created. There's the groups of community that are trying to rebuild, and then there'll be the groups of opportunists that are trying to take and gain
Call
power.
marauders,
right?
or whatever you want.
Marauders or gangs, whatever you want to call them. They exist now, so they'll exist then.
That's true. Gangs is a big part. Those will get even bigger and get worse, and we'll have to defend ourselves from the gangs. But we're on the opposite side there. We're trying to join a gang, but a good gang, right?
Right.
More of a family group, a mutual beneficial group, whatever that might be, whatever you want to call it. So what do you bring to the table to allow them to bring in? Do you have a year's worth of food storage and wheat that you can say, hey, we're going to contribute to this group by bringing these resources in, by bringing our skills, and then at that point they can say, okay, it makes sense to bring you guys along with us so we can benefit together from your supplies and your skills.
And if you don't have the money to get those things, you can get knowledge for free. Right?
Exactly.
Go get a library card. Spend some time at your local library. We've got so many neat systems within the infrastructure we enjoy now that we could be learning from, right? Even if you don't have a computer, just go down to the library. If you've got a computer, hop on. Spend a few days on YouTube and see what you can learn. I mean, everything from sanitation to fire starting to hunting and building primitive tools. You can learn a lot of that.
And I think the great part about this is that it doesn't have to be current information, right? Survivalists have been around for decades and decades, and living like the pioneers, living like our ancestors. There's plenty of material on that. It doesn't have to be current, accurate, high-tech information.
Well, and the neat thing is it's not. The older it is, the more relevant it becomes.
Absolutely.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's like you always say, if you want to understand the future, you got to look back to the past better. We're going to be 1800s again if and when. Mm-hmm. I really shouldn't say if, when things happen. So understanding the skills from those days, we've given these guys all these unique names, bushcraft or survivalists or preppers, In reality, it's daily life 200 years ago, 150 yeyears ago. It's daily life. And we've forgotten how to live that way and live free and independent.
Exactly. Even then, in 1800s, people were still not, for the most part, not living alone by themselves, being solely self-sufficient. They were still reliant on their community, on their towns.
Oh yeah, because trade and barter. I mean, you had your local shop that would take care of the repairs. You'd have a blacksmith. I mean, but they'd all work together to create a beating heart of an entire community. You may be the guy living on the farthest outskirts, and maybe you're trapping, beef and getting beaver pelts or something. You still have to come in, and you still have to communicate, and you still have to trade with. There's always an element of community that you need to have, and if you don't have that, you don't stand a chance.
Yeah, and I think a big key that I want to make sure everyone understands is, yes, we can go out and we can learn different skills, whether it's fire starting or shelter building or learning how to build a solar power system yourself, or those types of things. But you can learn that knowledge, but then it has to be applied knowledge. You need to be able to practice those skills and have practical experience with those skills. So getting out and actually doing those skills and not just book learning. I mean, that's important. And then when it comes down to it, maybe you can perform, maybe you can't. But if knowing how to grow a garden and you've been able to be successful doing it for a number of years, that is a very important skill.
Absolutely.
Like you're saying, and like I say, is that you would look to the past to prepare for the future. Those are the kind of skills that we're going to need. So I think here for the next several minutes, 7 and 8 minutes. I've got some cards in front of me from the Conflicted card game. We've had them on before, and we've given
those guys
some decks.
Josh was fantastic.
Yeah, a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. We gave a lot of decks away. I've got a number of cards here. I'm going to hand a couple to you, Scott. And I went through my decks and picked out some of these scenarios that had to do with this topic, with figuring out what your role is and what you bring to the table in a type of survival group, because they will form, and we will need to have some part in some of these groups. So what do you bring to the table? Okay, let me pick one out here. Okay, here's one. This is from deck number 5, Deck of Desolation. A person with a valuable skill set. So does that mean that's something's... Oh, that's
something here's vibrating.
Sorry. Yeah. A person with a valuable skill set that would be beneficial to you wants to join your group, right? However, this person has a physical disability that would prevent them from being able to take care of themselves. So along with needing to share supplies, you would have to divert 2 or more able-bodied people from your group to assist them in their basic needs. Would you allow this person to join your group?
Personally, I'd have to say yes, because that can only make your group stronger. It can only make your group more cohesive.
And it's stronger in the way that, okay, he doesn't necessarily bring supplies.
Right, but it gives you an interdependence, right? It gives you an interdependence. That person, whether it's he or she, is giving you knowledge that you don't have, but in exchange, it's giving purpose for those people. Yeah, you're probably tight on resources already, but it's giving greater purpose, and it's going to be rotating people that are assigned to help them from week to week, right?
And if we truly believe that skills are more important than things, then yeah, you're absolutely right. Let's got a caller calling in here. Let's go ahead and take this call here. Hello, you're live here on Prepper Talk Radio. Do you have a comment or question for us? Oh, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes,
yes.
Here.
Go ahead. I got you.
It'll just be like what they'll bring to the table if things go to chocolate or whatever. It'll just be widespread panic and crazy people running around that can't think clearly. And by the way, Porter Rockwell, on the end of the day, on the wagon trail out on the plains, he used to do stand-up, kind of cheer people up. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
That's true.
You know, you guys brought up blacksmithing, and that reminded me. I gave my forge to my ex-son-in-law a year ago, and I says, I want it back if you get divorced. And apparently they split up, so...
Get your forge back.
But she's got a new boyfriend, and now he wants it.
Uh-oh.
But I think he's interested in blacksmithing. I used to do it.
Yeah, that's something that's on my list, long list of to-dos.
Welding. I taught myself how
to make a
I
knife.
taught myself how to weld when I was 6. I mean, you know, and carpentry and all that. I can run cast iron drainage, you know, in buildings.
Oh, wow.
Cast iron pipes, you know, lead the joints.
Yeah, I encourage you all to make a list of those things. Write them down so you can visually see, okay, this is where my strengths are and this is where my weaknesses are, where I could do better.
Of course, knowing my luck, they'll put me on latrine duty.
Hey, it's a crappy job, but somebody's got to do it. And I think that's one of those jobs that will rotate. I mean, there's so many jobs that will rotate, right?
Make sure you bring fun.
Not everyone's going to want to do it all the time. There's no way you can have the perfect job all the time in a crap hits the fan scenario.
Yeah.
Make sure you bring some bags of lime. That way, it kills the smell and bacteria.
If you have those supplies, then you're going to have some value to a group, and whether it's your own or another one that
the lime keeps it from pretty well. It doesn't decay so fast because it kills the bacteria, but the bacteria is what gives off the gases.
Yeah, and if you have that knowledge and know how to get those types of supplies, and that's I think another key part is, okay, we're going to run out of stuff, but if you have the knowledge of how to manufacture or find or whatever, or to mine that stuff, the stuff that we need is going to be a very valuable skill in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your call. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, so here's the next question in your list. So I'm choosing one of the ones you gave me.
Cool.
Your bug out group has traded with others in the region for months, and all of you have decided to combine forces. There are about 30 people in your group, half of which are children. The combined total of all the groups would equal 600 people. The leadership is forming and roles are getting established. How much power and influence would you want in this newly formed community? What role do you see yourself fulfilling?
That's a big group, 600 people.
I think that's neat because it's actually this goes to everything I've always hoped for and preached for, right? Mm-hmm. Rebuilding communities. And you cannot do that on a small scale. It has to get bigger, right? Mm-hmm. To be truly effective, it has to have a size to it. I mean, that 600 people is now a tiny town, mm-hmm. right? That is a town that can sustain itself.
But in speaking in a small survival group, I mean, that's a huge group.
A small survival group of 30, half of which are kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's 15 kids, 15 adults. That's a good size. Mm-hmm. But that's hard because you've got a lot of jobs to do with very few people that can do them. All of a sudden now you have 600 people. Yeah, let's just say just 200 of them are adults. Mm-hmm. If you've got 200 adults, I mean, now you've got full facilities on beck and call, right? You can open up the local school and rebuild and have that become your community center, your
more
hub.
Of a normal lifestyle.
Yeah, and that's when you can build those relationships. What role would I want to have in that? Kind of a supervisor of some kind of sort, leading in, rebuilding, because I have a construction background, because I have a mediation background and contracts, and I do have a lot of leadership skills. But the big thing is I've also got a lot of hands-on training. So I'd want to be able to be elbow deep in whatever we're doing, whatever roles need to be fulfilled. I'm always willing to fulfill those. But I'd like to be in kind of a supervisory role where I'm helping to make sure we're getting it done.
Yeah, and I think for myself, I kind of usually see myself as a right-hand man, right? I'm the loyal guy. I hope you see this, Scott, in me. That I'm your right-hand man, and that's kind of where I like to be. I like to be the support guy. So all of you just, we want you to take some steps. Take action. That is the key. It's taking action. Thanks for listening. We will be taking next week off, but we'll have Ben McClintock taking the hour for us, and we'll catch you guys the week after that. And thanks for listening, and please visit our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. Take care.